I think have to consent to it. So
Oh,
uh, there, I think we're good. All right. So this
yeah.
is episode 4, I think, three or four. But where we
I,
left
I think it's four because you took,
4.
yeah, we did two, and then I think you cut and pasted another episode with
Yeah.
the roaster fire, talking about roaster fires.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah. And then what we've done is taken that content and cut that content up into shorts. So.
Okay. All right. I think
Um. So
go
where
ahead.
we left off last time was we were talking about we got kind of deeper into roasting and kind of what the process was like and how how that goes. But I want to take a step back and go to uh back to the beginning of we talked a bit about how you were leaving um the governor's office and that transition and then how you got um into the coffee with American River Coffee Roasters.
Yeah.
Um, so that where we left off on that subject is it was kind of falling apart. I mean, you were doing all the work and your partner wasn't coming in and wasn't well, first of all, how did you get into that? You were out of the governor's office and then you had this opportunity to invest. You had already invested in American River Coffee Roasters. And
Yeah.
at that point, your partner had to go do the his National Guard uh,
Right.
stint, just 2 weeks in the National Guard. So he had asked you to come in and fill in and manage the place as an investor. You were already an investor, right?
Yeah, I was one of the first people to get in. There weren't many. I mean, there weren't a lot of investors, but I was one of the first. Maybe a third or fourth, anyway, I think, at the time.
But
So,
did you own the roaster? So you had did you
well,
invest the money for the roaster? How did that come together?
that came along a little bit later because I think I mentioned it. I was learning, and we started on a 4 pound roaster. Now, this is kind of key because that's where I pretty much learned about coffee too, the different types of coffee and some of the flavors that were in each bean. But what really got me hooked was I was roasting 4 pounds at a time.
Mm-hmm.
We'd put the coffee out there, and we did some espresso and coffee by the cup. It was a pretty small place, but somehow the word got out, and what really got me hooked was customers. People would pull up in these Mercedes and Jaguars, and mostly women would get out, and they'd have their fur coats on and stuff, and they'd come and buy. You could only roast for maybe net 3.5, 4 pounds per roast. So I was selling out because they would buy up everything that was available because they loved the coffee, and I was like, wow, this is interesting. Something's going on here, and I was learning about quality, and so
Mm-hmm.
that much. We kind of decided. I talked it over with Jim, and he said, he said, we need a bigger roaster. I think I kind of mentioned this last time. He said, we
Mm-hmm.
need a roaster. Well, we were roasting on a 4 pound Civets open top roaster, which is not the most efficient way to roast coffee. It's a glorified popcorn popper, really.
So it was hot
But
air.
yeah, it's a hot air roaster. It was electric. The thing would break down every other day. I'd have to go over it and redo it, fix it, and clean the. They had these coils that they used to heat the air, and it was always breaking down. So I learned something about fixing a
Mm-hmm.
Civets roaster too. So anyway, he said to me, he was an attorney, or he had a law degree. I don't know if he's an attorney or not, but he said there's these what they call the ITC investment tax credits that are available for people that want to invest in equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Oh, really?" Because I was looking. I don't know why. I thought, well, that's a good way to maybe save some money and not have to pay so much in taxes. So you buy equipment and then you write off so much per whatever per year
per
of
year.
your.
You depreciate it, right? That's what they
Yeah,
call it.
you appreciate it. Yeah. So, and the thing was, the idea was that I would lease it to the company. I would lease the roaster on a monthly basis back to the company. And in the meantime, I was, roasting coffee, and he was leaving. He would go on these military, whatever you want to call it, missions. I don't know. Maybe he was in Venezuela or something. I don't know, but
Behind enemy lines somewhere. This is the
he,
80s, so he could have been funded by Ronald Reagan's
oh,
Iran Contra.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
another story. But anyway,
Yeah.
so he was taking off, and he asked you to you bought the roaster, and then they were leasing it back from you.
Yeah, well, I said, where do you get these things, these roasters? Who do you buy them from? And he said, well, there's a guy in the Bay Area, and he introduced me to Jay Andrews, and I think it was called Coffee Tech. Do you remember the name of that company?
Yeah. Oh God, I can't remember. I can't
Yeah,
remember. I'll
I
look
think
it
of it.
up and yeah.
Yeah, he's still working his
Really,
his.
he's got to be about 1,000 years old by now, right? Isn't he?
Well, I remember we went down to his shop down there in Redwood City. But anyway, so he said, "Oh, we have a 25-pound roaster, a German roaster. He'd brought it over from Germany." And I said, "Okay, And he said, "Well, how much? How much is it?" It was I can't remember. It was like $3,000 maybe, which by today's standards is a hell of a
Yeah.
good.
So that's in
But
the
anyway,
80s. That's probably 12, 10, $12,000 today, right? Probably if you did the
oh no,
conversion.
no, much more than that, man.
Maybe 20 grand.
A 25-pound roaster now. Yeah, not yeah, more than that even. I would guess. I haven't priced them in a while. But anyway, so I said, okay, well, I'll sign it up and have them bring it over and show us how to use it. Well, again, he had left and gone somewhere. He was good at taking off for 2 or 3 weeks and not letting people know where he was going.
So
So
was he supposed to be there at that time? He was, and he wasn't there, right?
he was supposed to be there, and I wasn't supposed to be there, but I had been laid off.
Fate intervened, huh?
Well,
Or
I felt an obligation to keep the place together.
yeah.
We had some kids working for us, and the way that they would get paid would be whoever worked the last shift would pretty much clean out the cash register, and that's the truth too. So they were getting paid out of the cash register.
Cash and
So anyway,
carry.
okay, that's a good one. I like that. So anyway, they dropped. They had the roaster dropped off, and I'll never forget. It was they left it in the sidewalk in front of the store, 37th and J Street, right across from KFC. And so they dropped it off, and I go, now what do I do? Well, no, he said, well, we don't have the 25-pound roaster. All we had available was this 50-pound roaster,
So it was a
50.
total bait and switch.
Pretty much. And they said, well, what, geez, how much does that cost? He goes, well, it was double. It was $6,500 or something like that. And that was it. That about cleaned up my bank account.
Hmm.
And a good thing at the time Brenda was working, so that kept us going. But anyway, so they bring this 50-pound God hot roaster in pieces and laid it on the sidewalk. I said, now what do I do?
Was it physically a lot bigger than the 25
Oh,
pound roaster? It was physically a
um,
lot bigger, right?
well, yeah, no, everything about it was bigger.
Yeah.
You'll have,
I remember that roaster it was big. It was a big piece of machinery.
I'll send you a picture of it.
I remember I used to clean around it at Java City,
Yeah,
right? It was the one that was in Java City.
it's a piece of art, really. The way
Yeah, it
they
was beautiful.
and then not to get ahead of ourselves here, but when we decided to open Java City, I had a guy I knew who was in an art class at Roseville, and he stumbled in one day, and I asked him if he'd paint it. We'd pay him for it. But anyway, that's down the road. So anyway, he says,
That's
"What do I do now?" I said, "We've got this roaster," and he said, "Oh well, if you want to put it together, call this guy Steve Pardini. I call him the Great Pardini. He's still doing it. He does big jobs now. He'll do." huge roasters, and
Uh-huh.
multiples too. And he's a when it comes to mechanical things, he's a genius in a way. I call
Yeah, I
him
met him a couple times at River Rock. I met him a couple of times.
a big guy,
Yeah.
burly. But what really impressed me, he used to do rodeos on the weekends. He that's he would do rodeos. I called him the Great Pardini because a good guy too, straight shooter. And anyway, he so I said call him up. Well, he comes to town and he puts this thing together. Well, hell, it took up of this little shop. It took up almost half the square footage of the shop.
What was the square footage difference between American River Coffee Roasters and the first Java City at 18th and Capitol?
Well, I think the difference was about double. I think the first location was about 800, 900 square feet. Java City was only 1,600 square feet.
Yeah, so it was about twice what, or Java City was twice what that place
Yeah,
is.
that's
So yeah,
another
so it
story.
was tiny. Wow, that's small. Wow.
Yeah, and it would fill with smoke. We would roast and place,
And no afterburner. You had a 50-pound roaster with no afterburner.
no afterburner. I mean,
Wow,
nobody.
that had to be dropping a ton of smoke, right?
We could do half batches. The first time I'll never forget, we went from 4 pounds, and then they showed me how to run it, how to use it, and let me tell you, man, it was like sweat beads on the forehead,
Did
and
it have a variable gas? It had a variable gas
oh,
adjustment, right?
a beautiful system. If you get the photo, we'll have to point it out.
Yeah, yeah,
It was
we'll
like
do
a
that.
carburetor. It was a carburetor where you had the air coming in from the top and you had the gas coming in from the bottom. And then there was a glass tube where you could see the mixture. And then
Ah,
you
no way.
yeah, and then you had a
Wow.
float in the glass tube and it would tell you the balance. Are you getting more gas or more oxygen?
So it
And
was
then
like a float valve, like a ball in there?
yeah, yeah, exactly. And the
Wow.
thing about it was good. I had been a welder apprentice. I had welded for the railroad for 2 years. They taught me how to weld, so I knew. Looking at the jets, it had a row of jets at the top of the roaster where the drum would come into play, and it had a row of jets. And I knew that you had to get the cone of the gas jets to be sharp.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever seen. You'll see it. When you light your gas stove the gas comes out, but it's a soft flame. It's not a
Yeah.
flame. Well, it was all focused into little needle points, and you could see the whole row of jets coming into heat the roaster, and you
Mm-hmm.
could adjust it. I could cut it back. I could really
So
tiny.
you were doing that, you would be doing that while you're pulling the dryer, while you're looking at the beans. You're also adjusting the
Yeah,
because that's how
yeah.
you regulated the temperature, right? How you could bring the temperature up.
I
So
would do both. I
yeah.
have to. We need to get that photograph because it had a lever. And I was right next to the trier. So with my left hand, I'd try the beans and see where it was, and then with my right hand, I would adjust the fuel mixture. It can make it hotter or softer, so I could
Hmm.
bring it up. And the main thing was to bring up the roast not too fast. You
Yeah.
want, like I said last time, I think you want the transfer of the moisture from the bean into the air, the vent it out, and then you would heat the bean, apply the heat to the bean, which would cause the bean to expand, which would cause the bean to open up and release the chaff.
Yeah.
And and then after that, after the first pop, then it opens up again and it releases the oil, which gives it the shiny, And then when you get to the Vienna, not Vienna, but Italian and French roast, then you get a lot of oil. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah. And that's where
uh,
your fire most of your fire danger is in that range between Italian and French, right?
Well, the thing is, yeah, it's hotter. You're going, I like a preheat of about 300 degrees, but then you bring it up, and if you're not really roasting till those darker colors, French and Italian, until you get to about 400 degrees. But you listen to the bean too, because it'll tell you
Yeah.
when. about ready to.
I used to always look at the structure on the outside of the bean too, because you could watch that structure, like the matrix, or not the matrix, but the it's almost like a, isn't it? It's almost like a like a matrix, not a matrix. It's a pattern that looks like a graph paper almost
Yeah,
that then
try.
changes. It starts to expand.
Yeah, striations. You see,
Striations, yeah, that's the word I was looking
is
for.
that the one? Is that? Yeah, my partner taught me that word.
So how did you learn? How long did it take you from the time that they put the roaster together and you did your first batch on the 50-pound roaster? How long did it take you
Oh, yeah.
to master it or to feel like you really,
It took a while because let's say I would do 10 batches. You know, you could do half batches. They don't recommend on any roaster that you do less than half of what it's designed to roast, and that you don't do more than what it's designed to roast. So you want to take it to the limit if
yeah.
you're doing a full 50 pounds, and because a lot of it's going to burn off. You know, it's going to get less weight as it goes.
Yeah, so
You,
you're really losing money as you roast. You're losing
oh
up to
yeah.
20% of your weight.
Yeah, that's we can we transgress or
Yeah, I think we'll go into each one of these like little segments into depth as we get an idea about like
okay.
what needs to happen. But I
Yeah,
want to
back to
stay on the whole like
okay.
actually, opening and
Yeah.
so you're open, you're
Okay.
are you did your
No,
partner
let's
ever roast on the 50-pound roaster or you were the only one that ever roasted on it?
well, once we decided to split up, I think he did. I heard I can't remember seeing him roast coffee, but I know he
Hmm.
had because I wasn't doing it when I left that company. But let's go back to how long it took to
Yeah.
be get more proficient. I wouldn't call me a
Where you
master
felt
roaster.
confident in what you were producing.
Well, here's, because I was developing the palate too, for the
Yeah.
taste of the coffee, and basically, like a chef or any cook, the what a restaurant serves is based on what the chef thinks tastes good, and that's what I was developing was what I thought was, really good coffee, interesting coffee, complex coffee,
Hmm.
so let's say I did 10 batches. Now in the beginning, I probably if I would hit two batches out of 10 that I thought was on the mark, I thought, okay, yeah, that's really satisfying. And then
Hmm.
the other eight, okay, they would be off a little bit here and there, wasn't quite. I missed this roast. I hit this roast, that's kind of what was going on in my mind. So I would adjust. I would adjust for the next time I roast that same bean. It was a different bean. Every bean is different from all the
Hmm.
countries at that time, 55 countries. But then multiply it times all the different microclimates, the microregions. One side of the mountain of coffee tastes different than the other. Anyway, so you
Well,
learn.
and also it's very similar to grapes or to how it is where a grape is grown. That
Oh,
flavor profile is imparted by the like you said the microclimate in that
yeah,
area.
no, it's more complex. I cupped coffee with Daryl Cordy, and he's the wine master. He was,
Hmm.
still is, and he told me, he said, coffee is more complex than wine. He said there's more going on with coffee than there
Hmm.
is grapes and wine. And so I would miss eight, and then pretty soon it got to be, oh, I was hitting 4 out of 10, and then
Hmm.
six, and then eight, and then maybe I'd hit nine, and hey, one day, I hit 10 that I thought were really good. And then it would drop, every once in a while I would miss another one or maybe
And
two.
I can't remember, but clarify when you do a blend, do you blend it? You don't blend. You blend it after you roast. So you're roasting the bean,
You can
each
do it.
being individually, the varietals, and
Okay.
then you're blending. You're doing your blends after with the roasted coffee, correct?
You can do it both ways. Okay. When you're blending, like I could tell you about some of the blends, like if I was doing a Vienna blend, a Vienna roast. I would use two beans. I can even tell you the blend was Mexican and Colombian. Now
And
you can
what
say, oh,
equal in equal parts?
yeah, yeah, pretty much
Okay.
equal. And you can say, oh, he just gave away his recipe. No,
Yeah.
because the beans change. They change from year to year. They change from the beginning of the year or the season, the picking season, to the end of the picking season. So
Yeah.
I can tell you what's in it. It's like Carlos Santana said. Um, I can tell you how to play guitar, but until you go over there and until you go over there and pick it up, you're not going to learn anything. So anyway, so yeah, no, I would put a Colombian and a Mexican together. Again, it always based pretty much on what I thought was, good coffee to
Hmm.
my taste, and lo and behold, other people liked it too. But it's more challenging if you're going to put the beans together before you roast them
Hmm.
because you've got two different densities of the beans. You've got two different consistencies. Now, if you're buying a high mountain coffee roast, most of the good stuff, the Arabicas, are hard beans and they're grown above 5,000 feet. So, it's difficult, but it's not, that hard. You can eventually
You
get it.
can do it.
Well,
You can do it, but you wouldn't
yeah,
start off that doing that, right? You'd probably get didn't you start by roasting everything individually and then
yeah,
blending it? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And the thing about blending too now, you can blend it afterwards. House blend. We had a Mexican, a Colombian, and I think we put a French roast in there or
Did you
something.
ever go over four beans? I think that four was the most, or was it three?
I think I would once it's like wine too. Once you start blending too much, it starts to all start to it gets
Yeah,
bland.
yeah. You're
Gets
canceling
bland.
out.
You're canceling out. So yeah, no, I think we did a four bean blend that was blended after the roast,
Hmm.
but I could tell you about it was the one coffee that we sold. I forget what it was called. It might have been the oh, anyway, I think of it. We had Costa Rican, French, Colombian. Now you don't. It's not all equal portions either. See,
Yeah.
if you have a good blending bean like a Colombian is a nice mild bean, you can use that as your base, and then put in 25% Mexican for the acidity. It's a little bit higher in
Hmm.
acidity. And then you put in a French roast to give it that really sharp aftertaste. Well, the French roast was a combination of two other beans that you would
So
take to a
there you get to four there then. Yeah, you're getting there. You're getting four there, but you're two are blended before and
yeah,
roasted together, and then the other two are blended in after.
yeah, and then that
Yeah.
that becomes that gets to be the complexity. It gets very complex when
Yeah,
you
that's
start.
like 3D chess, or what do they say? The 3D checkers and chess, the difference between checkers and chess.
Yeah, yeah. The thing about French, it's very unique, and it, things happen after a certain temperature in the French, but you got to have a hard bean to begin with, and so it's challenging because it after the full city blend, which most roasters at the time would say that's where you roast your coffee to, if
Yeah.
you want to know what the beans taste like.
Yeah.
What's in the bean? What's inherent in that bean? What acidity, sugars, carbohydrates, whatever's in there, you're going to taste it at the full city roast.
Because
Now,
you're
right bean,
really not tasting so much of the actual roast. Isn't it? It's similar to like if you're cooking a steak. There's a point at which you're not tasting the meat anymore. You're tasting the charring of the meat or the cooking of the meat, the roasting of it, as opposed
yeah,
to the flavor that's in the bean. So the full city roast gives you the flavor in the bean, and then you can make a decision about how much roasting flavor you want to add to it
yeah.
after
The
that.
one thing, the one thing, the misconception about acidity, you have to have a certain amount uh, to bring out the flavor of the rest of the bean. And you can have too much though, where it's overpowering. Like if you under roast your coffee, like which is very fashionable these days, and there's a reason for it
To
because
save
it
money,
weighs.
right? Or
Yeah,
you
it
retain
weighs.
weight. You're
Yeah,
retaining weight, which saves you money. You
it
make
could
more
be.
money.
Yeah, absolutely. You're selling a pound, but it's a heavier pound.
So
If it's
let's go back. I want to go back to the business more because I want to talk about how why that didn't work. Why the first because a lot of people will get into this thing where a business fails or it doesn't work the first time you try something and then they get discouraged and everybody looks at it like, oh, it's a big failure. You don't you quit. But I mean, like 90+% of businesses fail within the first, 2 or 3 years. And then it's the people who learn from that failure and then move on and apply those lessons that end up succeeding or having a major success. So back to the business, we'll keep getting into the actual roasting and actual
yeah,
product side of it, but go back to
yeah.
so he wasn't showing up. He was being your partner was being flaky for one reason or another. And
Yeah, he was interested in the business side of the business. I mean, he wasn't interested in the mechanics of it, the day to day.
mhm.
Uh,
He
there
wanted to be a
there's
business owner and play the role of a business owner, but didn't want to do the repetitive, mundane tasks every day. Would
yeah,
that be your description
but
of it?
he knew it was a better product, and he there's two kinds of people. I've always said there's people that love coffee that are in the business, and then there's people that love money. And they're two different people because if you love coffee, you don't have to worry about the money. But there are people that only think about making the money. So
Hmm.
they're not going to be those people, in my opinion, are not going to be focused on the quality. My focus was always on quality, always.
Yeah.
I loved a good cup of coffee. I still do. Part of it was a passion. I loved roasting coffee. I had worked a desk job for 8 years, shuffling paper and working the halls of the Capitol. It was frustrating, and it was a lot of people would get burned out. A
Hmm.
lot of people became alcoholics working in that Capitol, spending time at David's after work. Anyway, but once I discovered coffee and coffee roasting, especially, there was something I could do where I would use my mind, you had to think, you got to be on your toes,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's also physical. You've got to load the coffee, you got to open the bag. The bags are 150 pounds. You got to, drag the bags, you got to load the beans.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's
And then you got to bag the coffee. In the beginning you were doing it all, right? I mean, you roasted and bagged it, right?
yeah, yeah. It's very maybe someday we'll do a book called The Zen and the Art of Coffee Roasting. I read a book called The Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It was a huge seller back in the 70s. Good book, and it talked about Zen Buddhism
Hmm.
and an approach. And I've always likened coffee roasting to that. I mean, um, it's a combination of the mental and the physical, and you have to meld the two. And I just fell in love with it. Every day that I roast coffee was
So
a good.
you found that passion, and so it didn't feel like work to you at
Oh
that
no,
point. It felt
no.
like you were doing what you were meant to do at that point.
For sure. I
But
felt.
the business wasn't making money at this point, right? As you said, the employees would rather than get a paycheck, they would take everything out of the register, whoever worked the last shift. So,
Yeah. You ever
um,
worked? Got
so
paid.
it wasn't there was no financial processes in place. I mean, things were being run really loosely at this point,
Yeah.
and
The,
then your partner stopped showing up. So what's the breaking point? Where was the breaking point?
well, the breaking point was the business was growing actually, which is kind of because of the
Coffee.
people. Yeah, they were buying it by the pound. We didn't get a lot of people sitting around drinking coffee. We had a professor from Sac State would to bring his class down and sit around and I don't know, talk about art. Oh, he famous Peter Vandenberg, famous sculptor out of Sacramento, and he'd bring his class down. But most of it was retail, over the counter, where
Yeah.
these women and these jaguars and their the mink stoles. They would pull up to the curb and clean me out of the coffee, and I'd go back and
Yeah.
roast more. So
So,
anyway,
and just to put it in context, this is not the coffee house of Starbucks, or look when you look at a Starbucks where people are sitting there drinking coffee or taking drinks away, espresso drinks and that type of thing. These are coffee aficionados who
yeah,
are coming in and buying a pound of coffee and then taking it home.
it was real. It was real beatnik like. I mean, it
Yeah.
was you had the art aficionados, and it was like the holdover from the Jack Kerouac days and San Francisco. It came out of San
Hmm.
Francisco. Beats was doing it.
Yeah.
Starbucks wasn't doing it. Uh, they were only selling it out of a kiosk in Seattle at the
Yeah.
time. We were
Right.
way up with Starbucks when we started Java City. Um, but anyway, what the breaking point was that it was hard to hold down both ends of that business, opening
Yeah.
up and I would even take the money to the bank, and we had an account there, and I remember the woman would say, "Oh, you guys are really starting to do good," with
Hmm.
a little bit that we were depositing, it was growing. I
It
could
was
see it.
growing. She could see it.
Yeah, and she saw it, and I thought, well, we were making progress. I was working, the whole deal.
Yeah.
So we wound up selling this coffee to this guy who had office coffee. Tom Tom Weeborg had an office coffee service,
Yeah.
and he met a girl that he'd gone to school with, a woman, and she'd
Sandra?
lived,
Is that Sandra?
Sandra Singer, and she had
Yeah.
in San Francisco, and he was selling coffee. I'll never forget. He had a warehouse. I forget where it's down, kind of South Sacramento, and he had a forklift, and somebody put it in order, and he'd go take the forklift and go and lift this Maxwell house. I remember it was one of his big stores. I only Folgers was probably an
How did he find out about you? How did he find out about you, or where was the connection that did somebody tell him
Sandra.
that he needs to go and
Yeah,
start buying coffee from you? Is that how it went?
Sandra was said, oh well, because of La Boulangerie, which was at that time they were buying their coffee from a roaster in San Francisco, and it was definitely better. It wasn't great, but it was better than Maxwell House or whatever.
And
You know,
that's before the boulangerie started roasting. Yeah,
they started long after we opened
yeah,
Java City.
yeah.
In fact, Trong, the guy, the owner of the Labu,
He's the founder of boulangerie.
yeah,
Lobster.
it was his idea to bring coffee roasting to Sacramento. And I remember a couple of years later, we were going good guns. I mean, we were doing well, and I saw him, and we'd always tried to sell coffee to him, but he wouldn't buy it because he had this thing that he wanted to roast
He had
coffee
a
himself,
dream. He had his own dream.
his own dream, and he was successful with croissants. Anyway, so I remember telling him one time because he didn't buy coffee from us. He said, I met him. He said, "You stuck with it. You stuck with it." I remember him saying. He said, "Well,
Mhm.
I'm the coffee godfather." And I said, "Well, Godfather, you should be buying coffee from your godson." He didn't buy
I could see the
it.
look on his face when you said I met him a
He
couple times.
yeah, no, I think he said spiritual father, and I said you should be
Spirit.
the
So, okay,
spiritual.
so Sandra, Tom's
Yeah,
girlfriend, but then became his wife at
yeah,
some point. She's the one that pointed him to you.
yeah.
And then did he
Well,
approach you and say that that you guys should do something together, or was it whose idea? Who approached who, I guess would be the question.
the thing was, he had an account. It was Sac State Student Union, and they had a couple locations at Sac State, and there was a woman named Doris there, and he was selling her coffee, and he was asking her. She was asking him, "Can't you get better coffee?" And so he went up.
Mm.
He, there was another guy that had started up using a Cibits Coffee Works down there by where you were living on Folsom. But he was
Hmm.
using a Cibits roaster and
Oh, it was, I know, it's Coffee Works, right?
Coffee Works. Yeah,
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 yeah, he's still there.
yeah. Well, the original guy, I think, was Bill Jackson. I think
Hmm. Well,
this is,
the place is still there. I don't know if he's still
yeah.
there.
Well, he didn't. I don't know. I don't want to criticize him. He's still there, and we're not. And but he was using a Cibits roaster,
Hmm.
which is not as good as a drum roaster, and the coffee isn't as
Yeah,
good.
it's not. It's not.
Well,
I've been
here,
in there.
I'll tell you a little maturation about that. The guy that Trong told to go research it about bringing coffee to Sacramento, the Jim behind, he was working Laboo behind the counter.
Hmm.
So Jim went and he did this little business plan to do coffee roasting. Well, his girlfriend, I forget her name, she broke up with him, but she stole the plan. She took the plan with her. So she's one of the
Cold-blooded.
yeah, but she's one of the founders of Coffee Works. Her and
Mm,
yeah, her and this other guy, they were her new boyfriend, I guess.
cold-blooded.
They went and opened Coffee Works.
Jeez,
She had the plan,
cold-blooded.
took it
Um,
to the
so I want to make a point here. When
okay,
in these trends, whether it's coffee, whether it's beer, whether, whatever the trend is, it
yeah,
starts to build. It's almost like the pressure is coming from all different angles. You can feel it, and it's people start to talk about it. People start
yeah, yeah,
to say you should be doing this. You need to get this. These
yeah.
terms start to be thrown about, whether it's coffee or beer, or whatever the trend is.
Oh,
And
it's
that's
man.
what was happening at that time. What you're describing is this it's almost like pressure inside a volcano, or pressure is starting to build, and it's like word of mouth starts to take hold, and then people start to say, and then connections are made based on that pressure.
Well,
Does
it's
that
yeah,
describe does that
yeah.
describe the atmosphere?
It was word of mouth. I remember one of the customers was Marcy Friedman, and she was one that I can't remember if she had a Jaguar or a Mercedes or probably both. But anyway, she was
They were the Arden Mall people. They founded
uh,
their
oh,
started Arden Mall, right?
Friedman's. Yeah, in
Yeah.
fact, the son is big in that business
Yeah.
now.
Mark, right? Mark
Yeah,
Friedman. Yeah.
but Doris at Sac State told Tom, you need to get better coffee. And then Davis came along right after that. So
Hmm.
anyway, so then that's when we really needed that 50-pound roaster because we had to up the production. But so that created the demand, and we had to figure out what to do on
So that's
that.
what kind of put in Tom's head that he needed to upgrade the coffee, and then Sandra put him in your direction. So let's get to that point
Yeah,
where
he had to.
how do you meet? Describe the meeting, the first time you ever met him.
Um, I I would roast the coffee and then I would deliver it. So he was experimenting. He tried Coffee Works coffee. He found out about us, and so he was buying from both really. And then he kind of saw what was going on, and I was delivering coffee and to his warehouse. That's when I saw him pulling out the Maxwell House from the from the back.
Did he actually operate the forklift? I can't
Yeah,
see
he did.
Tom.
Yeah. He was pretty good. But
Wow.
his dad brought him up in the business, so he could do all of that. But so he looked at it, and I think his girlfriend said, we ought to get into this business. So he made an offer. He wanted to buy the business.
You think so? Sandra was the brains of the operation, I think, or she
Well,
was the brains behind the man, I think.
well, she had lived in San Francisco, so she
Yeah.
kind of saw the future market.
Yeah.
So he made an offer. He said, "You guys want to, I'd like to buy you this and that, buy you out, and maybe make you a partner, whatever." And Jim said no.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
he said, "No, we can do it on our own. We'll I can do it. We can do it." And so, this goes on, and the same thing, same routine, disappeared for a
He's
week.
disappearing.
And I was loving the business, but man, I was trying to keep it together. I,
Yeah.
I, I saw the same thing Sandra saw, it was like, yeah, this is pretty good business. But the number one thing is, like Curly said in City Slickers, this was the one thing that I felt really good about that I could do.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to give it up. So anyway, I was delivering coffee one day to his warehouse, and he was when I used to deliver it, I'd see. I played a lot of golf in my life. Started as a caddy, but anyway, when I would drop the coffee off, I saw he had a brand new set of golf clubs right by the door. He was getting ready to head out to play
So
golf,
you're
and I
like,
knew,
hey, this guy's got this guy's got something working here.
yeah, that wow, but he had a set of pings, and I was not a
At that
ping guy.
time, that was just when Ping first came out, right?
No, to me, they were like tennis rackets. Trying to play golf with tennis rackets, it was big. He was not a
Well, that's for
purist.
you, yeah. You don't
It
drive
kind
golf in
of
that.
told a lot about the future. He was not a purist when it came to
Mm, mm.
uh, golf clubs. So anyway, I'm trying to hold it together. I don't know how much time had gone by, and I just said to him, "Hey, are you still interested in getting in the coffee?" This is after I'd purchased the roaster.
Yeah,
It was after I stopped getting paid on the roaster,
yeah.
and I
So
was
they weren't leasing. They were supposed to lease it back from you, and they weren't making any of those payments. The
no, so I
okay,
looked at it. I looked. There was a contract too. There was an agreement, and I could basically foreclose or whatever you want to call it. So anyway,
yeah,
I saw Tom, and I said, "You still want to get in the coffee business?" And he goes, "Yeah, why? What's on your mind?" I said, "Well, I own the coffee roaster." I said, "If you're interested, we could talk it over." And that's when I told him. I said, "We should meet every Tuesday at a certain time, once a week, until we hammer this thing out." It
yeah.
was early February of '85. And he said, "Okay." So we did. We met every week. So we started doing
And
research.
he kept the meetings. You guys both showed up, and
Yeah.
that how many months did you meet before you had an agreement in place?
Well, we actually opened in December of that year. So went from February to December. We had to find a place.
Hmm.
We were going to do it in his warehouse first and just do wholesale coffee. But I kept thinking about those Jaguars and those Mercedes and those fur coats. And I said,
Yeah,
I don't want to give up the retail business. I think,
yeah.
there's a future in retail. So I said, okay, well, let's look around for a place, And I said, okay. And I
Was he
remember,
on board immediately, or did you have to talk him into
no,
it?
no, no. I had the guy I bought the roaster from was in San Francisco, Jay, and I was running down to pick up coffee down at United on the left side of the Bay Bridge. Folgers was on the right side going in to
Yeah.
San Francisco.
Where I forgot, Gordon Biersch was the name of that brewery
Yeah,
that took
oh,
over.
good beer.
Folgers was in the building that Gordon Biersch ended up to go in after that. Yeah.
So he said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "I'll tell you what. Let's go down. I know a guy in the Bay Area, and at the time I was getting comp rooms at the Hyatt Barcadero, and I said, we'll meet
Hmm.
at Barcadero, and I'll get us a couple of rooms." And he said, "Well, I don't like. I'll never." He says, "I don't like bunking with anybody." I said, "Don't sweat. I'll get a room for you. I'll get a room for me. No sweat, and it was pretty swank at that time.
You thought
So
it was
anyway,
going to be like planes, trains, and automobiles. Is your hand between two pillows? Is that the?
hey, Del Griffin, hey, I like me, man. Wife likes me too.
Okay, so you guys go down there, and then he does Jay talk him into it, or because
Yeah,
Jay was pretty persuasive, right?
well,
I
Jay,
remember.
if anybody who really introduced, I know Pizza was doing it. They didn't do it in the shop though. They had a place around the corner. I remember we went down and looked at it. But anyway, we spent I forget how many 4 hours in there talking, and Jay and showed him, what's going to happen in the coffee business and what
Yeah,
direction it's
Jay could
going.
really paint the picture. He really could paint the picture, you
Yeah.
know.
But hey, read that first page. I
Yeah.
stuck that in. It talks about how the quality went down because people start, they start looking at the profit margins. And
Hmm.
that's pretty much what he was saying. He said, yeah, we've got these big roasting companies, Folgers and Maxwell House, uh, Farmers. Peerless was doing a good job in Oakland. No, they were good, reputable roasters. Had become very big too. So anyway, Jay had pretty much talked, convinced him. And on the way back, he said, "I guess we need to look for a retail spot." And I said, well, I heard of one over here on 18th and Capitol, and he made a left turn. We were coming. He just said, "Where is it?" I go, "It's over here. I think it's
Hmm.
on 18th." And he made a left turn, and we looked at the building, and I said, "Wow, it's." I walked across the street and saw that tree, and
Yeah, amazing.
had a vision, man. I said, "Boy, I could see people, sitting outside."
Hmm.
We were
Hmm.
doing sit down cafe at American River
Did
Roasters.
you have an espresso machine there?
No, no, we
No.
that's when we went out and looked and researched it. I wasn't hugely in favor of espresso because the machines are messy. They're hard to
Yeah.
clean. They require maintenance. And that's when we brought Karen Ewing on as our manager, and
Yeah.
she had worked at Lebu, and somehow she had been dismissed for some reason, and she met up with Tom, and Tom said, "We're going to need somebody to, manage the
Yeah.
uh, retail." I said, "Yeah, no problem," and she was good too, very efficient. And she
So,
said,
so
"No,
you,
we got."
you guys are pulling this together. You got.
Yeah,
I want to go back to, but you still have your roaster is still in encumbered, or it's in American River Coffee
Humbert.
Roasters. Yeah. So
Yeah,
you've
well,
got to you got
I
to
told,
get this out of. You got to get the roaster out of there,
yeah,
and
yeah, because I told him, I said, I would talk to Jim, and I said, this is, unless we do a deal, this isn't working out. Um, Tom wants to get into business, so I'm going to, throw in with Tom. And of course, I own the roaster. I'm taking it with me. Well, that left him high and dry.
yeah,
Um, and he didn't like that. He being a lawyer, he locked me out. He locked the doors. I couldn't get in. I didn't
yeah,
trust him, but I knew, he didn't want a deal.
yeah.
And there was my roaster, and sitting in behind
And
locked.
and you had an investment in the company too, right? How much did you invest in the company? Do you remember?
I don't know what percentage it was, but it was about $1,500 to begin
Yeah,
with.
which is a lot of money back then. But
Yeah, well,
so you were gonna have to walk away from that. You had to walk away from that.
yeah, plus the roaster. Yeah, I know I'd
Well,
spent.
yeah, but the roaster was the main thing because you needed it for your part of the new venture, right?
Yeah, and I had almost $8,000 into the roaster. With the putting it together and buying it. So I went to an attorney.
Yeah.
Tom knew a guy. He was going to write a partnership agreement too. And he said, I can get this roaster for you. He said, but it's going to cost you some money, attorney fees and all that, go to court. He said, but the, the short way to do it, he says, possession is 9/10 of the law. If you go in and take that roaster or get it back physically, he said, you can save yourself a lot of money and, have your roaster. And I said, okay, if that's what I have to do, then that's what we'll have to do. So that started the
The heist, the planning for the heist.
yeah.
So how do you what how do
Initially,
you recruit some thugs?
I put my
Or
I,
your family? Is that how it went?
I put my Tom Cruise mask on and Mission Impossible. And, I said, okay. I asked, yeah, I said, okay, we're going to go in. Tom had two guys working for me. He had a truck,
Hmm.
and I said, okay. So I asked John and Danny and a couple of
John's your brother, just to be John's your brother, and Danny was your nephew.
yeah, and they had two.
God rest his soul.
Yeah, Danny was working the counter there.
Hmm.
I'd given him a job, so he was familiar with it. But anyway, so he said, "Okay, well, he's been closing at 6 o'clock. We'll go in at 5:30, and we'll take your wrenches and stuff. We'll make it so it's not usable, and then take it apart. And in the meantime, so Tom's got these two guys driving around the block in this pickup, waiting for the
Hmm.
sign to say, "Come and get you know."
The
So
signal.
the signal, yeah, and they were slid down in the truck, so nobody had seen. Yeah, I always. So we go in at 5:30. Well, Jim wasn't there yet. Somebody working for him, Ron, and overwhelmed. He calls up Jim right away. But we
Hmm.
went in by the time we'd taken all the major parts off that he couldn't use it. And he came in and he tried to stop us from taking it. He grabbed Danny. Danny just shrugged him off. He threw him off.
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Look, man," I said, "we can talk this over." I said, "I own the roaster. I'm taking it." And I said, maybe we can still do business somehow.
Yeah,
And
like well, work it out, try to work it out, but
and so he took
so
the
how
roaster.
long you dismantled it and then you get what do you get the drum out the door? I mean,
The
how much
drum
of it do you get out the door at that point?
Well, all of it, all of it,
All of it. So you got all of it. Wow.
all of it. Yeah, and they took the drum, the main drum, which was very heavy. In fact, I can't remember. Must have used a piano mover or a couple of them to get it out. And I think the truck had a lift on it. And we took it over and we put it in Tom's warehouse with the forklift in the
Yeah.
back, so nobody knew where it was. And then the other pieces, I was living on Darling Way in Roseville, and I had them in the garage there. And while we were strategizing and getting a lease on the place on 18th and Capitol,
Yeah.
and one thing led to another. We got the lease, and then the design. That's when
So
I brought.
we'll go into the birth of
Okay,
Java City next time.
yeah,
I just want
yeah,
so how did it all resolve though? You got the roaster out. I mean, you owned the roaster, so he really had no right to the roaster, and
yeah.
he had wasn't paying the lease on it or back to you. So did he ever press that? Did he ever like
No,
what
no.
ended up happening with American River Roasters? Did they close down and then
Yeah, he's
how did it tie up, I guess? You lost your investment, your 1500, but you got your
yeah,
roaster.
yeah. I don't know. It just faded out of business.
Do you
Without the
know if
roast.
he kept it, tried to keep it open for, did he go
He
back to
was.
roast?
He didn't have his heart into it. He didn't even
Yeah.
like. He didn't like even the cafe aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
He'd be reading the paper, and if a customer came in, it was a nuisance for him
He
to.
didn't like customers.
Now he lived in his head. He was very smart, intellectual, but he he'd be reading the paper, somebody come in and was like, "Oh God, I got to wait on this
Yeah.
person."
Beat up
You
on
know,
the So
me,
what ended up happening to him? Do you know?
no, I never
No,
saw him after
he
this
kind of
day.
disappeared. Huh.
I know
Interesting.
he had a couple of there was another stockholder, I think some of his family in that company.
Yeah.
And I know that one guy, Dave, I can't remember his last name. He remained loyal to Jim, and the the rumors went out, the story went out that I stole the roaster, that I was,
Yeah.
yeah, and even to this day, people think that some people, very few, but think that I stole the coffee roaster to start the business.
That's
Uh,
the lore. So we set that straight today that
the
it
lore,
was
yeah.
your roaster and that he wasn't making payments on it, and so you
I
uh
think I got within two payments on it before
yeah.
he stopped, and
Well, that's so let's wrap up there for today, and then we'll the next episode we'll go into the birth of Java City and kind of like more the not just more, just like the creative part of it, the logo, the things, all the parts that I think there's a lot of pieces that I think made Java City, unique and successful. And I want to go into some of those parts too, like the logo and like the Karen's contribution, things of
Steve,
that nature.
m-
But yeah,
my,
that's where we'll go
Mike,
next time with everything. So
okay, between you and I want to maintain the theme when it comes into coffee, the complexity and the consistency.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
how we get to